Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, ADHD and attention coach Jeff Copper, and I'm here to talk about one of my favorite subjects. It's attention, and specifically the word how, because to me, how is synonymous with attention. How is actually an adverb, which describes a verb or a process, like a pronoun describes a noun. And I've done some other shows before where we talk about labels. When we label something, we no longer pay attention to it. And so what's interesting to me is the word how. When we think of that, it's one thing, but there's different kinds of how. There's how do you operate something, what are the steps to set something up, and then there's what I call insightful how. And I could talk for a couple hours on it. But one of the things that I wanted to illuminate this with, if you have ADHD and you're going out into the world and you're asking questions for help, how does this work, or how do I do this? And often what they're going to give you is what I call methodical how. It's just what's in front of them. They're giving you an answer based off of some steps or a procedure or something like that. But then there's this other thing called insightful how. To me, it's the holy grail, really what I'm trying to get after. And more in this world, it's really hard to find people that have insight. So to illustrate, I want to share a story with you. Recently, I was going out of town for a sports thing, and I was renting a car. And I made reservations for the week with a very good price. Later, I found out that my mother was coming to town, and I wanted to find out how much it would be, or if I could add her as a driver so that both of us could drive the car. So I called into the rent-a-car company, and I began to ask them, can I add my mother as a driver? They said, yes, you can. I said, what impact does it have? And they came back to me, and my reservation was $270, but to add a driver was $181 in addition to what I was paying. And I said, okay, that's the answer, but can you give me some insight as to why it's so expensive? And then my frustration with customer service ensued, because they continued to answer it was $181. That's what the system said. That's what I was going to get. And I was becoming very frustrated, because my question was not what was the number, but why was the number so large? So if you've been on customer service, you're frustrated like me, and I want to understand how this works. So after demanding a supervisor and having to wait for 30 minutes, I finally got on the phone, and I was trying to ask, really, doesn't make any sense to me. Why? Can you give me some insight why it's $181? And when the guy got back to me, he actually explained to me what was going on. And that is, if I was going to add her as a driver by calling that number, they would have to rebook the reservation, and the rates had gone up. But if I would just add my mother at the counter when we both arrived, it was only $45. My point here is this. In understanding how the system works, that they were actually rebooking the reservation, you begin to understand why it was $181. But understanding that if I waited, I could add her at the counter for $45. Now, the customer service was just understanding the methodical, this is how it works. I put in the numbers, I put in what you're requesting, and this is actually what happens. How does this relate to attention in the world of ADHD? Well, as I've learned over the years, if something doesn't make some sense, or if the obvious solution isn't working, the chances are you're paying attention to the wrong thing. And all too often I find that people are looking at what I call methodical how, or how something operates, and they're not understanding the insight behind it. And in the ADD world, when you go out in the internet, there's a lot of advice based off of symptomatic answers as opposed to underlying how it works. I've done a lot of interviews over the years on Attention Talk Radio, and I've come to realize ADHD is really not a deficit of attention, it's a self-regulation issue. And when you understand the notion of self-regulation, it completely changes everything. And what didn't make sense all of a sudden makes crystal clear sense. Like, it makes sense now why the rate went up to $181, because I was booking the reservation, it was a week away, the prices had gone up, but also understood why if I added my mother at the gate, it was a reasonable cost. So with that being said, how is about what you're paying attention to. And as you go out there, I will tell you, search for the insightful how. The people that are just giving you the answer are likely just giving you the answer off of a page, and it doesn't necessarily work, and it doesn't necessarily make some sense. The point of this video is it's not going to solve your problems, but if you know me, you know I'm a big person on the study of attention. And if you're not paying attention to the right thing, you're going to get the wrong answer. And I'll tell you, it's not easy to find people who have insight that understand how it works. But if you find them, it's invaluable. I hope you've enjoyed this tip. You can subscribe to our channels and get weekly tips by clicking the button below. I also would love to hear your thoughts and comments regarding this concept and the video in the comment section. Past that, I hope you've enjoyed this tip, and I hope that I've given you a moment to pause and pay attention to attention, or pay attention to the differences in the word how. Take care.